On this 12-year anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, we take a look back at that emotional day and see how far we've come. First, covering tragedy. During our exclusive interview with former ABC World News anchor Charlie Gibson, he opens up about covering what he said was the most important story of his lifetime.
Producer in the control room for us said, "Something has just happened at the World Trade Center. There are flames coming out of the side of the building. A plane may have hit the building."
Then, keeping America safe with no terrorist attacks on that scale occurring in the past 12 years, are the government's safety measures working? Our roundtable discussion will talk about that. Marcus Harun Reports starts now. Hey there everyone, I'm Marcus Harun. Welcome to our first show. Right here every month you'll see interviews with noteworthy people and hear from new and young voices on a range of topics in news. Tonight, a familiar face to viewers across the country. Charles Gibson reported for almost 30 years at ABC News, and he anchored the network's top broadcast, ABC World News. We get his unique perspective now on covering one of the worst tragedies in American history.
The strongest words yet.
It was a morning that began like any other for the news anchors on ABC.
I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
They covered morning show stories including Fashion Week.
Behind me you can see gorgeous models.
And a murder trial.
Today, jury selection.
Then Gibson realized something changed.
I will never forget, Diane and I were sitting in the studio, Good Morning America, and we were about 15 minutes from the end of the broadcast, and we had run over. We were in a commercial. We weren't going to be able to do the next segment that we had planned because there wasn't time for it. Mm-hmm. And so we're just sitting discussing what to do. We have the stage manager has just said 1 minute, and they were going to come back. And a guy named Stu Schwartz, who was a producer in the control room for us, said, "Something has just happened at the World Trade Center. There are flames coming out of the side of the building. A plane may have hit the building. We have a traffic camera poised, pointing at the building. You're on the air, go."
We want to tell you what we know as we know it. We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center in New York City.
That seems like it would be a very big responsibility to be in New York where some of the attacks happened, reporting the news to a whole nation that is getting scared. You have to remain calm. How was that for you to have that type of responsibility?
You're talking about on 9/11 itself,
yeah.
and afterwards. Well, we were on the air when the first plane hit.
This is an ABC News special report.
The entire nation saw this alert flash across their screens, and at the time Gibson still didn't know exactly how enormous this story was going to be.
You have to, at that point, essentially say, we don't know any more than you do. You know, this is what we're seeing. We don't know what it is. We don't know whatever. Needless to say, you go to the pictures rather quickly.
But we're joined by the entire network just to show you some pictures at the foot of New York City. This is at the World Trade Center. Obviously a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion.
And then the second plane hit.
That there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
My first thought was, because it was forest fire season in California, that maybe it was one of those planes with a fire retardant thing, hanging from its belly. But then you thought, where would you get that in New York? And then my second thought was, it's a traffic copter. No, it's too big for that. And then it hit.
That looks like a good-sized plane came in and hit the World Trade Center from the other side.
And I will forever think back about what we said at the time. Diane, in the very human reaction, said, "Oh my God." And I wish I'd done the same, but I said, now we know what's going on. We're under attack.
So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway in downtown New York.
The interesting part was the next day.
We're starting this morning. It's 7 o'clock, and normally we'd be signing on the air with Good Morning America, but ABC News has not left the air for the past 22 hours now.
I remember thinking to myself, the specifics of the stories that we're going to have on the air is not as important as the tone that Diane and I adopt.
This is a picture of the plane. Oh. I don't care how many times you see it. It is just awful. Mr. Mayor, I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the coverage. It was enormously helpful yesterday. A lot of people used the television coverage as a way of figuring out how to get out of there, and you were enormously helpful to many of our citizens, and I thank you very much.
Gibson covered hundreds of stories and interviewed the last 8 American presidents, but he realized the giant scope of these attacks were even bigger.
I do remember thinking to myself, this is the most important story you'll ever report. And also thinking everything that you've done in 30-some years in this business is predicate to this point, to this moment in your life.
And now our roundtable discussion. Every month we'll have a different panel of young pundits to get their voices on the issues that are going on in that episode. Today we have 2 great panelists to start us off. First we have Colin Ruane. He is a reporter at KOMU-TV in Columbia, Missouri. And we have Bradley McRoberts, Arms Control and International Security, North Africa Branch Analyst for the U.S. Department of State. Usually he is in Washington, but today he's in Connecticut. Welcome, guys, to the program.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
As you just heard from Mr. Gibson, he told us a lot about his experience and what it was like for him to be reporting during 9/11. I want to play another clip of that and get your response. Take a look.
The country was united in a way that was amazing at that time. The flags that you saw in cars hanging from barns everywhere. The United States Congress that can't agree on what day it is. We're out on the steps of the Capitol, Democrats and Republicans alike, singing America the Beautiful. That was an amazing moment. Unfortunately, things have happened since that I think have divided the country in ways that are unfortunate because we were so united then. But it is exemplary of the fact that in times of adversity, when we feel threatened as a people, as a country, we pull together. And that to me was inspiring. I thought the country's reaction was inspiring, and I suspect, God help us, if something like that happened again, we would pull together in the same way.
All right, now I'd like to get both of your opinions, starting off with Brad, because you're already up on the screen. I want you to respond to that. Now, what did you think about the patriotism right after 9/11? What was the feeling like for you?
Well, on the heels of a national tragedy, there is always a drive to come together as one people, as as Americans. And this is echoed not just in tragedies in the U.S. but abroad, and various incidents after the London Tube bombings in the UK, after the Madrid bombings, train bombings in Spain. The same process happened. There is an inherent drive, I think, within every person to connect with those around us and our larger country. And it oftentimes takes an event like that, so jarring, so shocking, to really bring that to the forefront and to inspire us to do this again.
And Colin, I want to go to you. Why do you think that it takes such a tragedy before people have to come together? Why can't people stay in that united state?
Well, it's just one of those things that sort of weekends off a situation much like 9/11. A lot of people felt vulnerable and scared, and a lot of people just frankly didn't know what was going to happen next, so they sort of went to that as an outlet to try and take away any of the pain that had been brought about by this horrible attack that killed thousands of people. And I think a lot of people probably after a while just seem to have a disconnect with the need for unity, and that need often is ushered in by something as serious as the 9/11 attacks.
And now I'd like to ask you two, where were you when you heard the news? Starting with Colin.
Well, I was in elementary school at the time. I was in second grade, and I actually was the one that found out first in my family. Being in Idaho, we were in the Eastern time zone, so the second plane hit the World Trade Center just after 6 o'clock in the morning. So I had just woken up, and I normally just turned on the TV before getting ready for school, and I was the one that ended up seeing what was going on and alerted my mom and dad about what was going on, because I honestly, at that age, didn't really know what was going on, and I looked to them for guidance.
Brad, did you find that you felt that same way? I think that was a sentiment that a lot of people had. Is this going to happen to me? Is this going to happen in my area? How did you feel at the time?
Well, at the time, I just moved to Pennsylvania, and we lived in this town called Allentown, Pennsylvania, and there was the flight 93 that went down in South Central Pennsylvania, which is about an hour, give or take, from where I live. And it was very close to home because we were in school at the time. I actually was in the library. And on the heels of what happened, Flight 93 went down after the second plane had hit the World Trade Center. I think that's the time frame there. At some point, the school was aware of what was going on in New York, and then this happened very close to us. So they had us in the hallway in their version of a lockdown. And so there was quite a bit of fear, just what's going on. We saw teachers crying, we saw administrators crying, and there was a sense of something is going on that we don't know what, but something is going on, and it's for real, and it's bad. We'd had these drills before, tornado drills and whatnot. So what's actually happening? And I remember then going home with a letter from my school. I didn't read the letter; they told us not to, and I actually followed their instructions at that time. And coming home to just seeing my parents with their eyes glued to the television, and for that day, there was just in my community, and for me, there was quite a lot of fear about what was going on, because it felt, even though that was an hour away where that plane went down, it just felt like we were under siege. And even as a third grader, fourth grader, in elementary school, there was this overwhelming fear of this is something really massive that is happening right now, and a realization of that. I went home and I sat there as my parents watched the TV, and I don't think I realized I knew, they explained to me that something bad had happened, but I think the next day I saw my dad I came downstairs at 5 a.m. in the morning. My dad was reading the New York Times, and it said we are at war. And that was the headline I think I saw, and I realized at that point, I connected the dots that A, what had happened yesterday had not been an accident, but B, the result was war. And I knew, at that age, I did know what that meant. So there was a real just chilling effect, I think. Just those 2 days just were unlike any other I've ever experienced.
First, on security, the security measures that we currently have in place, just want to get your feedback on what we have in place now for traveling. Obviously, airways and trains even have more security, and there's a big change of security since 9/11. What do you think about the security measures now and trying to prevent an attack that way?
Well, 9/11, we definitely saw a huge array of a lot of different security, the rises in security, with having to take off your shoes, having to throw away liquids. Those are a lot of measures that are taken maybe as a reactionary stance. I mean, a lot of these were brought about soon after the 9/11 attacks and in the years following. And part of my job as a reporter, find out what people think. And this is definitely one of those issues where, opinions go back and forth on the issue. Often this is viewed as a reactionary measure. A lot of people think that, oh, this happened once, it could probably happen again.
I think there's a long-term question here that we have fundamentally failed, and that is we need to understand that we don't want to just prevent the hijacker from getting on the plane. We want to prevent the hijacker from wanting to hijack the plane in the first place. And that is where we fail. And that is where it takes more than just a security response.
That's a really huge question that you're bringing up there. That's a really huge point. And you're right, that's not something that they address. It's a more long-term thing that should be looked at. If that's huge. How would you even suggest that they go about trying to do that, Brad?
If we support movements for democratic change, if we support economic change and economic opportunity in those countries, we stand a chance. If we stand out against brutal dictators instead of supporting them, we stand a chance of changing the equation from do I hate this country? Yes, to maybe the U.S. isn't quite as bad as we used to believe.
Huge questions raised there from our panel. I'd like to thank both of you. Thanks very much, Brad McRoberts from the State Department and Colin Ruane from KOMU TV. Thanks very much again. That's all for our 9/11 tribute today. Join us next month for a show about giving back, helping others, and making the world a better place. We talked to Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh, who created dozens of businesses that help thousands of people in need. Comment below or follow me on Facebook or Twitter if you have any topics for us to discuss on our next Roundtable Discussion. I'm Marcus Harun, and have a great day, everyone. The full versions of the Roundtable Discussion and the interview with Charles Gibson are available online at harun.me. Check it out to see Gibson's lighter side and what it was like to interview 8 American presidents.